Rivera clarifying his comments, which I think was smart, to be very, very clear. I do not have any problem with what he did yesterday, except for the one problem I pointed out, which is I didn't like the comparison between himself, Del Rio, and Bieniemy, which is something, by the way, that Rivera agreed with. Ron Rivera might as well have listened to my opening monologue yesterday and went like, yes, that is correct. I screwed up there. I don't get why people are doing this here, and I wish everyone would stop being so damn dramatic. That said, people were that damn dramatic. People did take exceptions in all different kinds of ways with what he shared with all of us, and thus it is his responsibility to clean up that mess that he unintentionally made and perhaps should have known that he would make, and in that way should have known better. Again, you have to deal with what should be and what is. What should be, we should all be grown-ups, and when people tell us the truth, we should be able to go like, oh, that's interesting. Thanks for sharing. This is good. This is a sign of healthy, good, positive communication happening. And what should be, which is people don't do that. We have to live in the world of the world of what is, and that is the world of what is. So Rivera, before even taking questions today, stepped to the podium, made the rare opening statement. Here was Rivera today.
We know that we're trying to build here, and we're all aligned. As I've said many times since I've hired Eric, I love the overall message that he gave to the team his first day, and that was basically we got to learn to be comfortable when we're uncomfortable. And I think what's happened is for those guys on that side of the ball, things are uncomfortable. There's been a lot of change. And the entire way of doing things has changed on the offensive side. Change is hard, and I've always encouraged our players to have great dialogue and build relationships with our staff. Since those conversations took place with Eric and the players, I've seen the improvements. And I can honestly say that the last couple of practices probably have been the best of training camp, which I think is great. To me, that displays a team is beginning to embrace the message and approach to how he does things and how we want things done. I also want to clear up the reference I made about Jack in comparison to Eric. I did not communicate that correctly, and I met with Eric. We had a great conversation, and that was cool. I think the biggest thing is that we're all on the same page, everybody. I'm fortunate to have an experienced staff, guys like Eric and Jack, and a roster of players who want to help this franchise take the next step. We're all working to build a culture where players and staff can respect each other's point of views and the way that we do things and continue to be very professional with one another. At the end of the day, we're all a family and we're working towards the same goal, and that's to win. I just wanted to get that out there so everybody understands I wasn't as clear as I probably needed to be, and I own that, and that's on me.
Bravo! Hey! Good job, Ron Rivera. You took responsibility. That's your job as a head coach. You owned the part of it on the negative side. That was not very good. All in all, though, he reinforces the message, which is what the meat of that answer, the substance of that answer was, yeah, guys did have a problem with some of the ways in which they were being coached because it was different and it was new. But that's exactly why I brought Eric here. They came to me. I told them to go to Eric. They talked it out. They have learned. And now look at us flourishing. That's good. That's how coaching works. And I love that he also reinforced Eric's message that you have to get comfortable being uncomfortable. Because when you grow, there's going to be a point where it's comfortable or it's uncomfortable because it's outside your, wait for it, comfort zone. Like if you want to lift heavier weights, eventually you got to lift them and it's not going to feel very good. Or you're going to have to lift more of the same weights you've been lifting to get a little bit stronger. Won't go too far into the science here, but one of those two things is going to have to happen. You're going to have to find a way to overload your body. And that's the same thing when you're pushing to get better as a football player or as whatever. Like you're going to have to do things that you haven't done before that are harder, that are more challenging. Otherwise, you're never going to actually get the growth. You can't do the same things and expect different results. And so there is an adjustment period that happens. During that adjustment period, some players had some questions. They ultimately got the answers. And that's good. Rivera asked, I believe by Cakes, John Keim, why he would mention his comments from yesterday and kind of like why answer the question in the first place.
I think just to show the difference in who they are. You know, one guy's experience is different from the other guy's experience, but we all do things our way, and we all have the same goal in mind, and that's to win. And I think the best thing about it, too, is our players have learned, you know, their communications with with our coaches has really, I think, is been a big part of why you're starting to see the improvement, because everybody understands why we're doing these things, what we're trying to get accomplished, and that's important.
As I said yesterday, like, players going to a coach and being like, hey, I don't really get it, is a good thing. Continuing to not get it is a bad thing. And so if they're going to Ron and they're like, yo, this dude's like yelling at us, we're going a million miles an hour, I don't really get what's going on, I don't get why, like, I don't feel like I'm learning, I don't feel like I'm getting better. And he's like, go talk to Eric and he'll tell you all of the answers to your questions. And then that happens. Again, cannot stress this enough. Feel like a broken record. That is a good thing. Now, as for Ron airing it in public and how players are, then potentially thrown under the bus. Again, I don't believe that, but certainly some did. Some fans, some media, some whatever other people that are commenting on this. And how all of the player side affects this. Here was Rivera, kind of talking through that and the player concerns with Bieniemy in general.
I think the biggest thing more than anything else is everybody just wanted to know why. What's he trying to get out of it? And when you understand why people do the things the way they do them, and you look at the end result, that's the important thing. And the best part is we're seeing them. You can't deny yesterday was a good practice, can you?
For your
No, I just asked you the question.
That's how this works.
Okay, don't be afraid of it, though. Come on. I mean, from my perspective, when I watched practice yesterday, I was very pleased. And I think a lot of it is because guys understand what we're trying to do. And that's what I think is important. And they understand it because they've had open dialogue with them. And that's the thing. I mean, honestly, the articles that were written yesterday, and I saw a couple of the headlines could say, oh, the players understand. The players are getting it. You know what I'm saying? Instead of what they said. And if you sit there and you read it and you go, wow. But it's the same thing for you guys. You get a new editor comes in and he's going to be different. And you got to go, oh, wow, why does he do that? But then all of a sudden you see why and you go, whoa, I get it. Well, that's what's happening. We're having these aha moments. And it's because there's been open dialogue. It's because guys have come to him and talked to him about it. And that's what is really appreciative, is that guys are willing to talk. And Eric's very honest and very blunt and very upfront, which I think is great. Because we all know where we stand, and that's the most important thing.
I used to be, when I was growing up, and I lived a bunch of different places around the country, and I listened to a lot of ESPN radio back in the day, and Scott Van Pelt used to do a show with Ryan Russillo, and they had a game called Headliner Storyline. And basically, the idea was, like, you take the big stories everyone's talking about, and you're like, is this just a sexy, splashy headline? There's no substance to this story. Or is there actually something to talk about here? Is there a substance here? Is there a storyline? Is this something worth watching? To me, the way Rivera just put that is actually the point here. The headline is, because people, are in the business of making people or click on the story and hopefully actually reading it, is players went to Rivera to complain about Bieniemy. The storyline then explains that those complaints were met with a proper adult response, adult conversations, and grown-ups solving problems. But if you never read the story, then you don't know that. And you just comment on the headline, which, to Ron's point, and I feel weird, like, defending Rivera on this. But again, like, most of his comments sounded like he listened to the show yesterday and then said the things that I said. Like, it was a little too on the nose. So, Ron, if you're listening, hi! To Ron's point, if you had just had the same story with a different headline that says, Bieniemy, Rivera, and players resolve conflict, move forward together, you don't have to change a word of the story. But you've now framed it completely differently with a different headline. And all the facts remain the same. And that's why, to me, this is a big, giant nothing burger. This has gotten national attention. One of the people who was talking about it nationally today was Kimberly Martin of ESPN. She also did some actual reporting and called people and did the things that good reporters do before going on TV and just talking about it after reading a headline. So we'll talk to Kimberly about that coming up, kind of what she did, what she learned, what she thinks of it, what she thought of it yesterday, what she thinks of it now, coming up at 5 o'clock for Not My Beat. I also talked to Logan Paulson about this story when we taped Take Command literally an hour ago, and we're going to actually let you hear that early today. So that's coming up later on in the show as well. So stay tuned. Don't go anywhere. We'll take your calls on all of this next. We've got a couple folks on hold. If you're on hold, stay there. I promise I'm going to get right to you. But now is the time. 301-230-0980. It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980. Streaming on YouTube at... Let's get to the phones, though. Right on. 301-230-0980. That, of course, the brand new Ace Law listener line. In a wreck, Ace Law helps you get a check. Call 8888 Ace Law. Darren's with us here to get us started. Darren, you, sir, are on the Hoffman Show.
Hey, Craig, how you doing today?
I'm doing well.
All right. I'm going to say my thoughts right quick, and I'll take it off the air, Craig.
Okay.
Like me, I think Ron Rivera is not very articulate with words. I believe he's a tough man. He tries to be tempered when he gets to the microphone, and then he's challenged with this thing where he has to be diplomatic, all things that most tough men ain't good at. Make no mistake about it. He is a tough coach. When he was coach, he wasn't head coach. Yeah, there's stories about it. But Jack Del Rio, I'm sure he's not having none of it. But he don't want to hear none of it. But that being said, if I was Eric Bieniemy, I would call the offense into a meeting, just the offense only, and I would say, look, y'all, my career moving forward is on the line. I'm in it to win it, okay? Y'all haven't done nothing lately. What have you accomplished? Nothing, okay? If we're going to gang fight the guys against the street, and I'm creating a gang to go against that gang, I want tough guys with me. If you're not tough enough to tough it out, you're not willing to fight for your careers, then get the H off my team. Let me know right now. I'll take it off the air.
Well, hold on, Darren. Actually, I don't want you to take it off the air. I want to... Oh, and he hung up! Tough guys don't hang up, Darren! I just wanted to have a conversation.
You look so sad, man. You need to turn that frown upside down.
I need Darren to call back. He made some interesting points that I wanted to parse out. They're worthy of discussion, analysis, other stuff we do on the radio. I should probably start talking about them before I lose my train of thought, because my ADD is very real. Okay, I'll get to it. I think calling an offensive meeting is not hard. They have offensive meetings all the day. So if they want to address this with the offense, they could. I do not think it is productive to tell a room full of the best athletes on the planet, you have not done anything yet. You have not won anything. You suck. And not that you would necessarily say you suck, but Darren kind of almost went there. Y'all ain't accomplished anything. Wait, I think someone's calling back. Is that Darren? Is that the Anthony? We got to see. We got to see. Is that him? It's Darren. Hey! We love to see it. Anthony, stop talking to him. Put him on the phone. All right, Darren, thank you for calling back. I appreciate it. I wanted to parse out some of what you said. Although I do appreciate your willingness to take the answer off the air instead of scream at me, which some callers I think that's what they call to do. What I was saying is I actually don't know, pretend you're in the room and I'm Eric Bieniemy and I look at you and be like, you ain't won anything. You haven't done anything. You're actually who are you? Do you think that would actually would you feel good? Would you want to play for that guy? Or would you just be like, this guy doesn't think very highly of me. Why am I even here in the first place?
Yeah, I would want to play for that guy.
Okay.
Playing football in Woodland and Southeast D.C. and coming up and playing at Ballou, we had tough coaches. And, now looking back at it, I thank God for those guys. There wasn't a team. Ballou only has 3 Turkey Bowl championships, and all three of those teams had a Holbrook on it. And we were all coached by the same coach. And they were tough coaches, tough money. Coach Mo, they were tough guys, man. Yeah. No nonsense guys. And
so let me ask you this though, Darren, about that toughness. Did you know that they cared about you, or did you think that you were disposable? Did you feel like they cared about you through that toughness?
Oh yeah, with the problems we had, the social problems we had in our homes. Yeah.
And so that to me is like the line here, right? When we talk about toughness doesn't have to be callous, right? Toughness can also be caring, which I think Bieniemy's excellent at. Which also gets to what I think is getting a little bit misconstrued here about this situation. Because if I tell you, hey, some of the leaders on this team or whoever it is went to Bieniemy and was like, hey, man, like, I want to be as good as you want me to be, but I don't understand what the hell you're telling me to do. Like, I actually don't see that as a lack of toughness. I see that as being tough enough to have a frank conversation with your coach and be vulnerable enough to be like, yo, I need some help so that I can get to where you want me to go. You see what I'm saying?
Well, I see what you're saying, but I think some of that sensitivity will diminish if they are tough guys. You know, if they are tough guys, they've been.
But I guess what I'm saying, Darren, is I don't understand how that is sensitivity. Like, to me, that is just like, that's understanding, which is important because especially if you play, like, you know how mental and how, like, not mental emotional, how mental intellectual this sport is, how assignment based it is, right? And so to me, it's not even about sensitivity.
You know how Coach shows his love for you after he grilled you all week? It's when you make that touchdown, or you make a good play in a real game, not practice, in a game, and you come to the sideline, he pats you on the helmet twice, or he tap on the rear. That's how you know he really loves you.
I hear you, and Darren, we now got a couple more calls, so I appreciate you calling back. Thank you. But if you don't know your assignment, you can't score the touchdown. And, like, I think what we are talking about here is two very different things. These are not players that are looking to be coddled. And I'm not saying there aren't some of these in the league. Like, we talked about this with Santana yesterday. Are there dudes that have not played at the Ohio States, the Alabamas, the big-time schools where, like, they were the biggest fish in the pond and, you know, the coach designed their entire program to make sure this guy didn't leave in the transfer portal? Like, yeah, there's some of that that's happening here. But I don't think this is about emotional coddling. I think this is about the fact that these guys were getting grilled and they didn't understand why. And if they don't understand why, they can't go out and execute, which means, yes, you're going to get yelled at again, but it's because it's not about not getting yelled at again. It's about not making the same mistake twice. And what happened is, according to Rivera, these players went to him and then ultimately Bieniemy. Some probably did go straight to Bieniemy. We just didn't hear about those because we didn't ask Eric about that. But I'm sure there have been plenty of those conversations. In fact, I will say I saw one yesterday on the sideline. I saw Brian Robinson talk to Bieniemy on the sideline and be like, hey, I needed to take this route here, right? And they had a conversation very quickly because it's between plays, and Bieniemy's like, no, just hit this there. And B-Rob's like, okay, cool, got it. Like, those conversations happen too. I think sometimes when people don't hear about something, they assume it didn't happen as opposed to that they didn't hear about it. Well, how could he have never? They did. Oh, well, now I'm still mad because there's an emotional trail to my feelings, but damn be those facts getting in the way. But I think what we're talking about here is not this like soft, sensitive, whatever. I think what we're talking about is this is a new offense that is very wordy. There's a lot happening, motions, different formations, different personnel groupings, guys lining up in different places, an attention to detail with the route running and the blocking schemes and the tracks out of the backfield, because I don't know what position it is. I don't know who made these complaints, so I don't know what element of the game. But there is a higher level of detail that has ever been demanded of them, even if they played at Alabama. And thus, some guys are struggling to grasp that stuff. And it can feel defeating. And instead of getting defeated, they ultimately went to Bieniemy, got understanding, and now they move forward in a much, much better place as a football player and thus as a part of a better football team. That is good, and I will not back down off of that. There are other points being made. There are other discussions being had. We can continue to have them, but I firmly believe at the core of what we're talking about is what I just described. It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980, always live on the free Odyssey app. Let's go to, well, Anthony, should we break, come back, and take these calls, or should we just run a little heavy here and take them now?
You can take one.
All right, let's take Dean real quick. Ron, I love your call. I see it on the screen. I just want to leave more space for it with what you want to talk about next. So, Ron, don't hang up. Dean,
you know
go
why?
ahead.
Because if you ran a corporation, you would be a good dude. You would be a good dude to work for because you know what you're talking about and you ain't dealing with the BS. We're talking about ego right now. We're talking about ego. We're talking about 3 different eras of time. We're talking about Ron, his time of playing football. We're talking about Eric Bieniemy's time of playing football. And we're talking about we're dealing with these prima donnas that we're dealing with right now, okay? Teaching these kids how to play football.
What makes you think that they're prima donnas?
They're prima donna because they were getting everything given to them since they were little kids. These guys are alphas. We got Chad. We got what's his name? Chase Young on our team right now that knows exactly what he's capable of doing and where he's come from, and from Ohio State. All these guys that get to the pros, they already have gotten a silver spoon to their dinner table. They've got it all. They've already got it. Look, my problem is this. They already exposed themselves by not knowing who Eric Bieniemy is. Okay? Eric Bieniemy was an outstanding, almost a Heisman Trophy candidate running back. And he played with another Heisman Trophy guy and another Heisman Trophy guy.
And?
These guys need to toughen up.
Like, what does this have to do with toughness? That's just what I don't understand.
It has something to do with toughness because they're dealing with, coach, I'm not pleading the way you want me to do it. No, do it the way you got to the where you got to the pros, man. Do it the way you're supposed to do it. Do it the way football is played. Football's only played by one way.
No, it's
not. It's played by being tough.
No.
Football's being tough.
But this has nothing to do. Okay.
Tell me how you play.
Dean, we're up against the clock, and you refuse to answer the question. Just flatly refuse to answer the question, which is, what does this have to do with toughness? And then you scream about a bunch of other stuff that has nothing to do with toughness. You want to know why? Because this actually has nothing to do with toughness. Silver spoon. You don't know the backgrounds of most of these dudes. Trust me, a lot of these dudes did not grow up with silver spoons. And by the way, the most quote-unquote silver spoon dudes on the team, the guys who were high-profile recruits, the Bama guys, like John Allen ain't a prima donna. Deron Payne's no prima donna. Terry McLaurin had to earn his way at Ohio State. He was damn near going to have to walk on. Urban Meyer made him earn it. Like, I don't know who you're talking about. Like, if you want to say Chase, sure, but we're not talking about Chase. Chase plays defense. We're talking about offensive guys. How many 5-star recruits do they have on their team on offense? Like, if you want to have the cojones to call out professional football players as soft, when they go, yeah, they're handsomely paid for it. But when they grind and push their bodies to the absolute limits of human performance so that they can run into each other full speed 17 times a year for your entertainment, go ahead. Just know those of us with more self-awareness think differently. Streaming live on YouTube too, youtube.com/@theteam980. A couple folks popping off in the chat. C-Man says, EB is a man on a mission. Let's go. That's the thing. I don't disagree with the mission. I don't disagree with how EB is doing anything. I think it's great. I think it's great that he's pushing guys. They needed it. This offense was so lackluster, so failed on attention to detail, so failed on tempo, so failed on creativity, so failed on everything the last 3 years. That doesn't really counter any of the points that a lot of other people that seem to be very mad about all of this are making. But just to be very, very clear, in case I have not, there's not a lack of support for EB and what he's doing, or even the way he's going about it in this particular chair. Let's go to Ron. Ron, appreciate you holding through the break there. Go ahead. You're on the Hoffman Show.
Thank you so much, Craig. I appreciate you and your YouTube cast, and I love it. So my issue is the players are going to be players. They're going to complain, and that's just what happens. But Ron Rivera revealing it and putting Eric Bieniemy out there like he did, that's the issue I have with it. Bieniemy was passed over 16 times for jobs. Finally, the 17th time, he got the job with the Commanders, and I think he wanted a head coach job, but he accepted the assistant coach because he needed to get out there and show his stuff. So from the moment he got here, people have been talking only. He screams. He's loud. It's like he has no other capacities that makes him the person and coach that he is. So we know people have doubts about him, or else he would have been a coach right now. We already know people have doubts about him. So putting him out there like that, I think just brings his name in a light where it's just a questioning thing. And of course, he's going to have time this season to prove who he is, what his mettle is, and whether he belongs as a head coach. But I'm just saying right now, he hasn't had an opportunity to do anything, and the coach should have left that as an in-house issue. That's my only thing. It should have been, because African-American coaches, if they happen not to make it that first time, very rarely do they get a second opportunity to do it. So my thing is that's the thing I'm concerned about.
Ron, that's a fantastic call. I really appreciate that. I'm going to respond to it by mostly saying that's a fantastic call with a lot of really good points. It is why I think if you want to criticize Rivera and say there's a way to portray this that would not have caused the firestorm, I will at least hear you. Again, I think that is a far bigger reflection on us, on media, on fans, on the ecosystem around. Because to my core point here, what was described was competency. What was described was humanity. What was described was a way to create better outcomes. But the way in which it described certainly was going to cause a firestorm. And I do think it is Rivera's responsibility as the person who was like, yes, Evie, I will help you get to that next level, to make sure that he doesn't get in the way. And I do think something that I saw like Nikki Javala do this, that I thought was great. On her Twitter account the other day. She's like, just so people are clear, like, EB is way more than yelling at people. Like, he does yell. Like, let's be very clear. Eric's voice is loud. It carries it, which is a good quality in a coach, especially when you're one who likes to watch from 30 yards behind the play. You need to have clear communication. But Eric can have one-on-one conversations, and I've seen him do it. He calls guys over, and he's like, hey, let's talk about this. I don't know what they're talking about, because it doesn't happen very loudly. He is also, what makes him special is not the intensity. What makes him special is not the yelling. What makes him special is not some of these things that even some of the folks, quote unquote, defending him are glorifying him for, the toughness, if you will. What I think makes Eric Bieniemy special is he understands football at an extraordinarily high level. Like, the man is a borderline genius when it comes to this stuff. In order to have his attention to detail, you have to understand that level of attention to detail, frankly, even beyond the one you're teaching your players. Like, he could talk football at a level that would spin all of us in circles because we don't exist in that world. Someone like Logan Paulson could do it because Logan made a 10-year career out of the fact that he was that level of a thinker. A conversation between a Logan, a Sean McVay, a Kyle Shanahan, and Eric Bieniemy, and Andy Reid. I would imagine a guy like D'Amico Ryans on the defensive side of the football, as someone who just coached under Kyle and now got the Houston gig. Like, I'd imagine he could exist on that level. That's what makes those guys special. And I think that there is a disservice in some of this conversation about these very intangible things, about people screaming about toughness, that loses the point here. What Eric Bieniemy is incredibly brilliant. A man with an extraordinarily high standard, but also someone who cares and whose players, even if it takes them a second to realize it, will very quickly come to realize that he cares. If I had to pick 4 attributes for a head coach or for a coach of any kind to coach me how to create a spreadsheet, that would be the 4 things. Caring, knowledgeable, effective communicator, like those, that's the list. And so I appreciate Ron's point a lot because there is a little bit of forest through the trees here where the perception becomes the reality. And other owners who have ESPN on in the background of their offices in their team facilities or wherever it is they keep an office just see the controversy and they don't they're never reading the story. They're not getting past the headline. They're probably watching it on mute. Like, we're going to talk to Kimberly Martin next. They never hear Kimberly. They just see the thing on the bottom. That this guy is caught. There's been some controversy about this guy, and it's an excuse not to hire him. And in that way, that is a disservice to Eric. That is a disservice to EB. And if you want to have that be your criticism, I not only hear that, but I sign off on it. I rubber stamp that. Really, really, really good stuff from everybody here on the phones. We might be able to get back to a couple more calls later. If you want to comment on the YouTube stream or comment on Twitter, whatever you want to do to get in touch with the show, go ahead and you can continue to leave some of those, and we'll read them later in the show. But next, we will talk to Kimberly Martin from ESPN, who not only has been commenting on this story all day, but did some additional reporting around it. So we'll get her insight and analysis next. It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980 and always live on the free Odyssey app.
Hey, this is DA, and you're listening to The Hoffman Show on the Team 980 and the Odyssey app.